In November, the Philadelphia City Council formally apologized for the police bombing, which killed 6 adults and 5 children and destroyed the surrounding 60 homes. Memories of the attack that killed the 11 people were resurfaced last week when the University of Pennsylvania and Princeton University acknowledged that for the past 36 years, anthropologists have been using the bones of at least one of the bombing victims, 14-year-old Tree Africa. In a video course posted online called Real Bones, Adventures in Forensic Anthropology, Penn Museum curator Janet Mong, a visiting Princeton University professor, holds bones thought to be of Tree Africa.
On May 13th, 1985, the government dropped a bomb. And they killed 11 people. 11 of my Move brothers and sisters. My family members. And when they did that, medical examiners were paid to find out what happened to these dead people. And they took my Move family, my brothers and sisters, to a lab, and they left them unrefrigerated. Their bodies were decomposing. And they did such an egregious thing at that point that they were fired and stripped of their license. The people that took over or were supposed to be taking over and continuing this job in an ethical way were the people that we are out here protesting against today. There's a shirt that Move have been selling for years, for decades. It has the helicopter on it, and it says, "Welcome to Philadelphia. Welcome to Philadelphia." And there's a quote on this shirt that says clearly, "This was not an accident. This was deliberate murder. The circumstances surrounding it were horrible, and even more horrible to me was that the perpetrators basically were never in any way punished." And that is a quote from Dr. Alan Mann. Alan Mann, who is the person, the monster, that has done these horrible things to my sisters. And my question is, where are the rest of the people? Where are the rest of the people? Because you know that if they took Tree and Delisha, they didn't leave the other ones behind. So we are here today, right now, to say that we want these motherfuckers to be held accountable for what they did to our family. And we ain't going away. If you know anything about the Move organization, you know we can stand our ground. We come back. They dropped the bomb on us and it ain't stopped nothing. It ain't stopped nothing. Oh, it hurts. Every time I think about it, it takes me back to 1985. But it ain't stopped nothing. That monster, Janet Mong, is on video describing how my sister probably suffers a fracture because something heavy landed on her. It is impossible to call these monsters people or women or men because they are monsters. Everything that Move was accused of being dirty, rotten, ugly, whatever, is exactly what these people are.
It is such an honor of my life to be in community with the Move family, freedom fighters like Pam Africa and Mike Africa Jr. And I'm so happy to see as many people out here today. to stand with the Move family. I wrote some words down because I'm afraid that I will just burst into tears like I've been crying every single day since I found out that my employer is housing the remains of Delisha and Tree Africa, who were disrespected in life, who've been disrespected in death, who have been disrespected in the media reporting of this travesty. So today, before we go any further, we want to remind you all of the human beings whose lives were stolen. Yes, we are here to seek justice for Delisha and Tree Africa, whose remains were held without consent in Penn Museum for decades. But as we seek justice for this specific atrocity, we remain grounded in the reality that this would not have been possible if there was not a first prior atrocity, that of the bombing of Move headquarters. The lives of 11 people, 5 children, and 6 adults were viciously taken at 6221 Osage Avenue on May 13th, 1985. Most people don't fully understand the extent of the brutality and violence that happened on Osage Avenue. The Move bombing, quote unquote, is the popularized way to refer to what happened on May 13th. But it minimizes and it also obscures the fact that it was not a bomb that killed 5 children and 6 adults and their animals. It was the intentional decision to, quote unquote, let the fire burn and to eliminate the possibility of their survival by shooting 10,000 rounds of bullets for over 90 minutes into the Move home and dropping a second bomb on the front porch, even as Move members tried multiple times to escape. Most people don't even know the names of the beloved family members and community members that were stolen. How many of you know their names? So before we go any further in the program, we will follow the spiritual traditions of our ancestors and call the names of the 11 human beings whose lives were stolen. And when I say their names, we will take a moment of silence for each life, each valuable, beautiful life, and say Ashe. We begin with the children whose lives should have been protected. Tree Africa, 14 years old. Delisha Africa, 13 years old. Netta Africa, 12 years old. Little Phil Africa, 12 years old. And Tamasa Africa, 9 years old. And for the adults whose lives should have been respected. Rhonda Africa. Teresa Africa. Frank Africa. Raymond Africa. Conrad Africa. And John Africa. Know their names. Remember their names. Today and always.
It was beyond enough when we found out over 2 years ago that Penn had the remains of about 53 people believed to be enslaved. 51 of them from Cuba, from a plantation in Vedado. And 2 crania from Black people in the US. And they had some of these crania of enslaved people, indigenous people, displayed in a glass display in an anthropology course within the the Museum of Penn. About a year later, during the uprising, the conversation came up again because Police Free Penn put together some demands, and they expanded the demand that I had, which was repatriation. And there was also a student who wrote an article. Penn decided to say they're going to start a committee to consider the question of repatriation. Fuck their committee. Fuck their committee. They said they were going to take the crania and put them in storage. Gross. Disgusting. Then we find out, about a year after that, that not only do they have the 53 crania of enslaved black people, but that they also have 14 crania of black folks dug up, grave robbed. And their burial site is where the Franklin Field is today. And there's black bodies still underneath Franklin Field today. And they're in caskets and they're unnamed. And then a few weeks ago, we find out that Alan Mann worked with the medical examiner's office. And because Janet Monge was a PhD student, she assisted him in helping the medical examiner identify remains. They worked for a day and a half with the medical examiner, and that was supposed to end their official engagement with these remains. Mayor Good establishes the Philadelphia Special Investigative Commission to look into move. And that body hires another forensic specialist, Hameli from Delaware. Hameli looks at the remains and says, these are of 5 children and 6 adults. And there was a discrepancy that Mann made. Mann said that one set of remains was from someone older, and the only person they couldn't account for was Tree at this point. This is heavy, but I have to tell y'all. Hameli says, no, these remains are Tree's remains. There were other remains that Mann said he wasn't sure of, and that was the remains of Delisha. And Hameli said, no, I think these are Delisha's remains. Hameli puts out a report. Mann contradicts that report in the press, further delaying the giving of these sacred remains to family, right? Hameli has to re-examine the remains. He does this with some colleagues. And ultimately, he reaffirms his initial report, right? He says, this is the truth of what happened, and these remains belong to Delisha Africa and Tree Africa. The commission says to the medical examiner's office, release these remains using your normal procedures. Family, who were on the outside because moms were imprisoned, held a ceremonial funeral for Tree in November of '85 because the city had yet to give them the remains. The remains finally were released in December 1985. The medical examiner was supposed to hand over all the remains. The funeral for Tree and her sister Netta was a joint funeral held on December 14th, 1985. So family who were on the outside, not mom, believed that they had buried Tree on December 14th, 1985. Delisha Africa, no one claimed her remains because family were incarcerated. And so the city gave those remains to a politician who owned a funeral home. He buried those remains in 1986. So why is it almost 36 years later, actually 35 years later, because that video where Janet is holding up some remains of Tree. That happened in 2019. So about 35 years since they were murdered by the state. They were held, parts of their sacred body were held in a box. And two researchers connected to the investigation early on were taking the remains between university, treating Tree and Delisha like an academic game of hot potato. This is disgusting. This is gross. This is not normal. This is not right. This is not okay. Monj has to be fired. I stand firm in the demands of MOVE. Free Mumia Abu Jamal. Free Mumia Abu Jamal. Free Mumia Abu Jamal.
While we're talking about the remains of our children, there's a lot of unfinished work we have. The Wilson Good street sign is still up. 59th and Overbrook Avenue. That was one of the earlier signs of disrespect and disregard when they named the street after Wilson Good. And we placed a beautiful shrine there as a remembrance. And the city moved it. So they won't even 2 years ago, they won't let us even have a shrine to remember them that we placed at that evil Wilson Good sign, 59. So Jamie, when you talk about things need to be removed, that street sign need to go. And I just want to close with a solidarity statement from Dr. Maulana Karingabi. He's an ethicist, so the fact that you mistreat humans means that it touches him deeply. The recent revelation of desecration of the bones of the two children who were killed in the brutal, inhumane, unjust, and unjustifiable bombing of the MOVE communal house in 1985 speaks once again to the depraved and racist disregard too often shown towards Black people and Black bodies, living or deceased. And it speaks also to the continuing devastating impact systemic racism in this society has, not only on the way we live and die, but also how we are mistreated and disregarded even in death. And we can only imagine how much worse conditions would be if we did not engage in righteous and relentless resistance. So it would be worse if we didn't resist, people. It would be worse. We think it's bad now, but if we ain't tear shit up, it'd be worse. It reminds us of the long, sordid, and savage history of this country's failure to treat Black people living and deceased with dignity and due respect. And the University of Pennsylvania and Princeton University are in this matter complicit in this pattern and practice. Moreover, the city itself has shown gross negligence in allowing the children's remains to be examined without appropriate protocols to handling their remains. It's none at all. And he said this makes their apology and concession of understanding the immeasurable and enduring harm this has imposed on family and Black scene has no meaning to it. We strongly condemn and resist as unethical the ghoulish use of the bones of the two murdered children, Tree Africa and Delisha Africa, for teaching online courses in forensic anthropology, especially without the knowledge and permission of the Africa family. And we condemn and resist the insensitivity to the traumatic emotional impact this would and does inflict on their parents, Consuela Dotson Africa and Janet Africa, respectively, and reaffirm our solidarity and grief and righteous and relentless struggle to achieve justice and reparations for them. We reject and resist all the white power and privilege assumptions that whites can objectify those different and vulnerable and use them as property, props, and objects of morbid pleasure on so-called scientific and social curiosity. And you know they do it because you read the article where they called our child's bones juicy. How do you call a child juicy? I could have reached through that page and slapped the shit out of that woman. Penn's apology to the African family. Penn's apology to the African family for its role in this is necessary, but it is not sufficient. In addition to apology, those involved must return the remains, make restitution of handling of the remains with the involved family, and work with the community to achieve this. Anything less is expanding the injury of injustice and the unethical and unjustified disregard of Black lives and human rights. And this we will continue to resist at every level and at every area of justice. We will continue to resist. So, free Mumia and return our children to us. Ashe.
On the day of May 13th, May 12th, May 11th, May 10th, there wasn't a damn thing going on. Nothing. They came in like thieves in the night and came in with bulldozers and every form of, horrible shit that they can bring to kill. They also, Delisha and all the children were not in the house on May 13th. They were doing what they usually do. They was shopping, food shopping, down 9th Street with a supporter by the name of Gloria Cheeks. When she got back and saw all the cops around the house, because they wasn't there when they went shopping, the cops lifted the blockade up, escorted the children back into the house, knowing full well what their plans were. They deliberately killed 11 Black men, women, and children. This plot was a plot to kill off the MOVE organization and especially John Africa. That bomb that they dropped on our family is exploding 36 years later, because what this brings out is the ugliness. Why the fuck was some cops at our house on August 8th? Why did they kill Janine's baby? Why did they beat Alberta's baby out the womb? And because they were trying to kill off the power of John Africa. On the move and food for thought and tear this motherfucker down.
All right, on the move.
I hope you're feeling the spirit of Delisha and Tree Africa here with us today. I know we just took the streets. We just shut some shit down. You can clap. You can clap. But as much as this is about justice for Delisha and Tree and the entire MOVE family, this is also about remembering that it is not bones and remains that is why we are here today. It is because those bones and remains were once flesh and blood. They were the beautiful lives of Black girls, Black children, Black children, Black children,
Black children!
Black children,
Black children!
Black children,
Black children!
Black children,
Black children!
who should have been able to grow old, who should have been able to live full lives. And before we leave here today, we want to ground ourselves in the humanity of Delisha and Tree Africa, and the love and the care that their loved ones held for them. So we want to do something a little bit different for a typical kind of MOVE, taken to the streets action. We would like to remember the lives, as short and as beautiful and as filled as they were, of Delisha and Tree Africa. How does that sound, everybody? All right. So, as my good brother, Mike Africa Jr., who is a second-generation member of the MOVE organization, as he mentioned at the other side, this brings up a lot of horrific memories. And so I want us to literally send some love to our good brother, Mike Africa Jr., as we go through this moment. I want you to send some good love to Mama Pam Africa as we go through this moment. Let's give them some love. Let's show them some love. That's right. Pam Africa is royalty. She's our royalty. And if you don't know, now you know. All right? So, you ready? You ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So,
Can y'all hear me?
So, when you hear MOVE children, meaning when people outside of the MOVE family hear MOVE children, you all might not know what that means, to be a child of MOVE. And so, as a kind of starting point for this conversation, Mike, how about you tell everyone here what it meant to be a MOVE child? What was the unique bond that moved children, yourself, Delisha, Tree, Netta, Little Phil, Tomasa, Birdie? What was that bond that you all shared?
That bond was like inseparable. You know, we did everything together. I mean, I think a lot of the bond was because of the trauma we experienced. I think a lot of it was because we were all kids together, you know? And we spent a lot of time just together. You know, something that people don't really know about Tree and Delisha and a lot of the kids, one of the reasons we were together is because our parents were in prison. You know, Tree's mother is Consuela. She was in prison with my mother. And Delisha's mother is Janet, and she was in prison with my mother. And the same was true for Phil. Janine and Phil was his parents. Delbert is Delisha's father. So we had so much time around each other just because of that, but also because kids have their own language. You know, the kids, I remember this, some of our supporters from France came to Philly, and my son was playing with their daughter. My son don't speak French, and their daughter didn't speak English, or American, whatever this is. But they interacted with each other as if they'd known each other for years. And that's what it was like with us. You know, we just bonded, but we were so close to each other. We did everything together. We slept in the same room together. We laughed together. We cried together. We were terrified together, you know? I think that's what really cemented us as a unit. And today, all of the kids that I was growing up with, the ones that didn't get killed, I still am in touch with all of them. And if too much time go past where I don't see one of them or the other one, I gotta give them a call. What's up? I gotta knock on their door. And the bond is between us. And when we see each other, it's the magic of that childhood that we had. It all comes back. It's like it never went anywhere.
So there's something that Mike said that I want to make sure we all understand. So there's nothing lost in translation. He said that one of the things that bonded MOVE children together is the fact that their parents were politically imprisoned. And to understand why their parents were politically imprisoned on May 13th, 1985, that means we have to understand something that came before it. and that's August 8th, 1978. So can you, just for the folks who may be hearing this history for the first time, tell us a little bit about that, particularly because you have a very special story that comes out of August 8th, 1978, by which I mean your literal existence, right?
Yeah. So, because of the revolutionary mentality of John Africa, our belief is simple: protect life. And we encourage other people to protect life too. And when we say life, we're talking about people, animals, and the environment. And having that belief, it's simple. It seems really simple, because it is. But it is an extreme threat to the system, because when you're talking about protecting life, and these people clearly are talking about punishing life, the suffrage of life, right? The pollution. So John Africa moved people this belief, and practiced it, and we were attacked for it. And on August 8th, 1978, hundreds of cops came out to our house with helicopters. They had guns, and they were ready for war. And they assaulted the house, and they assaulted the people in the house. And my mother was in the house. And Tree's mother was in the house. And Delisha's mother was in the house. And when they raided the house, they arrested all of the people. They took the kids and studied the kids, and then our parents all went to prison, and the judge gave them a 100-year sentence. And the people that were in the house May 13th were fighting for the release of the people that were in prison.
So, in many ways, in case you all don't know this, and you can actually learn about this in a little documentary called 40 Years a Prisoner, which maybe some of you have seen, because his parents, Debbie Africa and Mike Africa Sr., were two members of the Move 9 who were captured on August 8th, 1978, and he was born in prison. His mother birthed him in secret, in silence, and the fact that he is here, that he survived 78, that he survived 85, is really something that we should have a hand clap for, honestly. And also, just for context, because I know that some of you are students, some of you may not be from Philadelphia, the site of the police raid of MOVE headquarters in 1978 is literally 5 blocks that way and 3 blocks in the other direction. The bombing of Osage Avenue is literally, let me get my math together, 24 blocks that way and about 3 blocks the other way, right? Just so you understand the cartography, the space that you are in. So we said that we wanted to talk about the humanity of the MOVE children whose lives were stolen. And so I'm wondering if you can share with us some of your memories of them. You were a small boy, but just in talking to you, I know that you have so many fresh, raw, beloved memories of them. So tell us a little bit about the MOVE children. Tell us about their personalities. Tell us about what you remember about their lives, about your lives together.
When Tree was the oldest, and because of that, because she was the oldest, a lot of responsibility she took on. And people were expecting more of her too. And one of the ways that she would have a lot of fun would be when we would go to the park. And if we went to a new park, Tree, all of us, especially her though, would scour the park to find the biggest tree, because that was the one that she was going to climb. And she would go so high, the branches that she'd be like sitting on, they looked like they couldn't hold her. But she knew how to navigate those trees like a squirrel. And the other kids they always raced her. They never won. And for years, I thought her name was Tree because she loved trees. I didn't know that her name was Catrice. We didn't have real names. If y'all been around Pam long enough, y'all know I got a nickname. I ain't gonna tell y'all what it is, but if you be around her long enough, you definitely hear it. But Tree was her nickname. It was short for her name. But I just thought that was because she loved trees. And Delisha was like, she was smaller, but she was still one of the older kids to me. She was like the leader of the kids almost. Like she used to tell us what to do. She used to teach us how to get into mischief. Right? Because we wasn't supposed to have cooked food, right? So she was the one that would teach us how to get it without getting caught. And I never, I could never do it. I could never do it. I always got caught. And she would be like looking back at me like, nah, that ain't it. And some of the things that we used to do, we were so athletic and strong. Some of the things that we used to do, when I think about it now, it seems like a dream. And the only way that I can know that it's real is if I ask other people who remember it that I didn't ask about it already. Because some of the things we used to do, well, I ain't gonna say because there's little kids out here. But we used to do. Cover your. No. But that's the things that I remember about them the most. And for a lot of people who don't really understand the trauma that we experienced, just try to imagine at my age, 3, 4, or 5 years old, and they were 10, 11. We had plans together. We planned to run away just to get away from the confrontational atmosphere. We didn't know what to do. We were just so distraught. And when we came back from Richmond, Virginia, I remember feeling that we were probably out of the chaos, right? Because we got chased out of Richmond just like we got chased out of Philly to Richmond. That's a whole other story, y'all. But in Richmond, we were taken just like we were taken in Philadelphia by the police. And we ran from Richmond to get away from that abusive orphanage. 11 days, hair combed and ripped out of our scalp by the roots and pushed down basement steps and just treated horribly. They said when they got me back, I had a diaper rash nearly to my knees and up to my stomach because they just did not take it. And I wasn't the only one, and I wasn't the youngest. But Tree was the oldest, and she was one of the ones that were help out, go get things and just always there. And she never, ever complained. At least not that I heard. She might have complained to the adults because we moved people. So we would say things like, man, I'm tired of this shit. You can't forget that part. We still move people. But, man.
What'd you say? What'd you say, Pam?
They fought them motherfuckers, too. And them children, they fought them. Yeah. And they knew that they were in a damn fight.
So when we came back, because Pam was talking about it, we fought. I don't remember a lot of this stuff. People told me this stuff, but they thought them older kids was rumbling to keep them off of us. Tree and Delisha was rumbling the cops as children. They were rumbling them to keep the cops off of us. So when I think about what has happened and what these people have done to them, it is unfathomable. And the other day, as Chris and I were going through these forms and this investigation stuff, trying to figure out and trying to get to the root of this, who would do this, who did this, why did they do this? One of the things that was in those documents was Tree's birth certificate. And when I looked at the birth certificate, I saw her footprints. And I saw her birth date. And at the time when we were kids, we didn't celebrate birthdays. We didn't do that. You know, if we needed something, our rules were if you need something, you get it. You don't wait till a day to tell you that you need something. You just get what you need when you need it. But when I looked at her birth date, I never knew that it was the same day as mine. And it was just so striking. And even though that doesn't really matter, it feels like a stronger connection. And when I think about Delisha and her sister Yvonne, we read the statement, Chris read the statement from Yvonne, her sister, who she never really got to really know. It is such a tragedy. And it makes me so determined, so confident that we are going to bring accountability to these people who did this shit to our people. I don't care how much time it takes, and I don't care what it takes. All right, let's bring it back. I'm sorry.
So, for people who don't know where we are physically on Penn's campus, right behind us is the president's house. This is the president's house. And hey, whatever you need to say, y'all can say that. But part of the intention of coming to this place is that in the response that we've seen so far, there have been sidesteps, half-truths, mischaracterizations, falsehoods, shallow apologies that were not delivered to the Move family, but that were sent through the media and on email blasts, but not directly to Move members. And so I hope you all feel how palpable, how present the pain is for members of the Move family who are having to relive all of these traumas anew, with new traumas on top of that, so close to the anniversary of May 13th. This is the first year after the city's so-called apology, and we see that we haven't even uncovered all of the harms, all of the violences. And so we really wanted to remind, or not remind because you didn't know these beloved human beings, but to share with you that they were human beings who had lives and dreams and loves and loved ones. And I don't know, there was a story you shared that you, when we were getting ready for today, you really wanted to tell this story. I don't know if you still want to tell the snow story.
Oh, yeah.
You don't have to. But you specifically said, don't let me not tell the snow story. So.
All right. Yeah. So, all right. This is what Chris talking about. So y'all know when we was kids, we used to run around naked all the time, even in the winter. We were strong, you know. So Tommaso was, one of the kids, and he and I were crying about something. My grandmother was about to leave the house, and we wanted to go with her, and she, for whatever reason, she couldn't take us with her. So to make us feel better about not being able to go with her, she told us that it was going to snow that day. So we happy. Tommaso used to do this thing where he would run in a circle when he was happy. He would run in a circle, his arms be swinging, and he'd be just going, right? So and he had a big stomach, right? And I used to say to him all the time, did you swallow a whole watermelon? And, we had this thing. But anyway, it was snowing, or it didn't snow yet. So we looking outside. It didn't look like it was going to snow. It looked like a regular day like right now. And so we sitting in the window. We hopped up on the windowsill, and we just kind of back to back, just waiting for the snow to fall. Looking out the window, we don't see no snow. We sat there so long, we fell asleep. I don't know how much time passed. When you're a kid, time is different. We fell asleep, and when we woke up, there was snow everywhere. We couldn't see anything. We couldn't see the street. We couldn't see the cars. We didn't see anything. So we looked at each other. We hopped down. Snow. It's snow. He opens the front door, and we looking outside at the snow. And we naked. No clothes. My man ran outside and jumped in the snow. He started throwing it up on himself and covering himself in snow. He was white, half white, right? So his body turned red like immediately. And now he's just sitting there looking like, and I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, nah, I ain't doing that. I ain't doing that. I ran upstairs and I put some clothes on. And then I ran outside. When I got down the steps, he was still out there in the snow. So I ran out there and I joined him, and I'm in the snow and we playing and we just throwing snow up in the air on top of each other. The other kids were there too. They said the same thing that I said. Nah, I ain't going out there with no clothes on. Tommaso, he could really take the cold well. And so we played so much, our clothes got sweaty and wet, and we took them off, we throw them down, and we put some new clothes on. Tommaso put some clothes on. We went back outside, and we played until those clothes were soaking wet too. And the other kids, they were doing something. They didn't really hang out with us as much. We were younger than they were. When you're a kid, 2 years is a lot, right? It is. Not nowadays. We 40 and 42, that don't mean nothing. But back then, it means something. So we got in the house. By the time we were done playing in the snow, Grandma was home. We had a pile of clothes mounded over on the floor. She came in the house and she looked at us and just shook her head and chuckled and was like, what did y'all do? And Tree, the oldest, what did she do? Immediately, Grandma started picking up clothes and gathering them up to take them to the laundry, and Tree just instinctively, willingly, without hesitation, helped her do it. And she was smiling the whole time, telling on us, telling them they did this and they did that. They, gathering everything up. That's one of the vivid memories I have. I have a lot of memories, but they're not really clear because I was so young. But that one, I really, really remember that one. We had such a good time, and it was one of the last times I saw them. That's the story.
Let's show some more love to Mike Africa Jr. Let's show some more love. It really takes a lot to, number one, come on this campus, right? It takes a lot to remember these things and then to share them with strangers. And so I really want us to clap just again to show some love for So I think it's really beautiful and poignant that we can laugh and smile in just taking in the memories and of the lives of Delisha and Tree and the other children who were killed on May 13th, 1985, alongside our tears, alongside our rage. But we don't forget that that rage is real. The need for justice is real. The demand for justice is real. And so, one thing that I have found so despicable about the media coverage is that it is centering the doers of the harm, as opposed to the people who have been harmed.
That's right.
I don't know about what an apology means and looks like to you, but I'm not trying to hear about your apology from somebody else. I'm not trying to hear about your apology until you've come to see me. Ask me what I want, what it would look like for you to repair harm, if repair of harm is even possible. And so, as a way of kind of closing today, which has been a beautiful day, a beautiful coming together in honor of Delisha and Tree Africa, organized by the people who loved her, them. And so we want to hold space to hear what might it look like to honor Delisha and Tree Africa. Not for the media, not for the PR, but in a true transformative and reparative sense, if that is even possible in the first place.
Yeah, somebody said take down that fucking sign. That Wilson Good street sign. The mayor who was the person who was the mayor that cooperated, that worked with the city police and the state and the military government to drop a bomb on our house. The fact that my sisters are in a laboratory being experimented on and he has a sign, that's one thing that could be done. There's other things that can be done. First of all, let me just say, make no mistake about it, there's nothing that can be done to fix anything, that can repair anything. Can't bring them back. But I mentioned that sign because Mama Maisha, who lives not far from that sign, she has to pass that sign regularly. It's a reminder. But as to how we're going to move forward with this in our strategy, we are assembling a team. We're building a team of strategic-minded people. And we're going to come up with a strategy. And we're going to figure out what the next steps looks like. And we are going to let you know. And we're going to need your help. We're going to need to add extreme pressure. John Africa said the system is controlled by pressure, and you got to keep the pressure on. And we're going to need your help. We're going to need their help. So as we move forward, look out for updates. We got a lot of people that are wanting to talk about this because we got families of other victims. Let's not forget Henrietta Lacks. Right? I just talked to a person. My email has been flooded with people who are complaining about this same type of stuff. I got so many phone calls from people who remember and was a part of and are still suffering today because of what was done at Holmesburg Prison. Acres of skin, and those people were experimented on by doctors from the University of Pennsylvania. So we are going to assemble this team, this crew, this network of organizations and legal people, legal strategists. We're going to figure this out. So if Dr. Alan Mann really believed what he said when he made that quote, that the people, the perpetrators, were never in any way punished, I'm glad he said that. Because if what they should do is expect the type of justice that they would want to see if this was done to their families. All right? That's where we at.
So,
and one more thing, just so let's make it clear. Like I said earlier, Delisha and Tree were two. There were 11 people that were murdered. John Africa was my great uncle. Frank Africa was my cousin. And all the other people were my Move brothers and sisters. And there's a lot of connections to those people from other people who might not at this point know about this, but when they find out, I can expect them to feel like I feel. So this thing, we can expect to see this thing mushroom.
all right, clap it up, clap it up. So it's clear that with the rawness of the pain of all these horrific acts that we're only beginning to understand, because let's be clear, we still don't know a lot of information. We still don't know how, after an investigation was concluded, according to the city's records, how is it that after an investigation is concluded, 2 forensic anthropologists can be given remains for further study? That actually doesn't make any sense. So we need to understand some things about how that happened. We need to understand who all knew and was a part of and was complicit in the retaining of these remains for 36 years. We need to understand what kinds of things were done, the way that they were profited off of, even in their death. And so there's still a lot of answers that need to be offered beyond an apology, right? And so maybe by way of closing for real, you can just share a little bit about May 13th, 2021.
May 13th, we're having an event, an action. We're gonna protest, we're gonna rally, starting at the Move marker. And we're gonna march to Malcolm X Park, where we will have somewhat of an exhibit of the history of Move on billboards. And we will have people to speak about that day. I will definitely be there. Crystal Strong will definitely be there. And we want you to be there too. May 13th at 5:27, the time they dropped the bomb. We're gonna read statements from people that remember that day. And we're gonna talk about how we're gonna move forward.
That is at 63rd Street, which is Cobbs Creek Parkway and Osage Avenue. There is a historical marker there. And so you've heard it here. The Move family is inviting you to join them and us in a particularly special remembrance of May 13th, 1985. And so we hope to see you there. We thank you for coming this evening. Clap it up, clap it up, clap it up. On the move, 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 on the move.